Good evening. I'd like to call to order the May 9th, 2023 regular board meeting. I'd like to also announce the meeting of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Board of Directors are being recorded and live streamed for the purpose of transparency and increased public access. The live stream, along with the recordings from previously held meetings, can be found on the school board YouTube channel. If all would like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we'll have a brief moment of silent meditation. Roll call, Mr. Longwell.
Mr. Bradley.
Here.
Mr. Burkhardt. Here. Mr. Hartman.
Present.
Dr. Lebo.
Here.
Mrs. Maris.
Here.
Ms. Morgan.
Here.
Dr. Rhodes.
Present.
Mr. Sanker.
Here.
And Ms. Rupp.
Here. Endorsement of agenda. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda, Mr. Longwell?
There are no other changes, and the agenda will otherwise stand as read.
The reading of the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 11th, 2023. Do any board members have any changes, corrections, comments on the board meetings from last month's meeting? Seeing none, Mr. Longwell, they'll be accepted as printed. We're moving on to item 2, hearing of visitors, items on the meeting agenda. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents of the school district. At this time, we have reached the first opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments related to items that are listed on the evening's agenda for a vote. The second opportunity for public comment will occur at the end of the meeting. The second opportunity for public comment is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please come up to the podium and share your district name and address. This is for items that are being voted on, that are on the agenda being voted on at tonight's meeting.
I'm Robert Schaefer, 904 Peachtree Drive, Upper Allen Township. One question, one comment, if I might. The question relates to the new job. I assume it's a new job, not a replacement, Director of Academic Program. When you get to that on the agenda, I would appreciate if there's a rationale for why that position is being created. Not just to vote on it, but to have some discussion or some explanation, if you will, about why that is needed, given that there's already a director of secondary curriculum and other things like that. The comment is with regard to the mission statement beliefs, and I gather from my reading of the agenda that you have discussed this previously, that it says that this is like a distillation of previous discussions, the new mission statement. But my question or my comment has to do with 2 parts of it. In the old statement, there is a statement, education must be relevant to students' future college career goals, provide students with tools for lifelong learning and global citizenship. The new one doesn't really mention in that relevant clause the issue of citizenship, whether national or global. There's somewhat of a mention a little bit earlier about responsible citizens, but I'm wondering why it seems to me the issue of citizenship as a goal of education seems to be downplayed a bit. The old mission statement has a clause, we believe the education system should include opportunities to promote social and emotional wellness. That language has been eliminated. The question of social and emotional learning is a hot button topic, as I'm sure everybody knows. It's become a buzzword for better or for worse. And certain groups, I think, inaccurately have charged, as an article on today's PA Capital Star says, that social emotional learning, according to some, is alleged to be a vehicle for introducing leftist propaganda in the classroom. Again, I don't believe that is true. I go with, again, from the same article, a person who is quoted as saying, in reality, social emotional learning is merely pedagogical jargon for teaching kids critical thinking, emotion management, conflict resolution, decision making, and teamwork. So my question is, what was behind the elimination of that phrase, social emotional well-being? I think you get the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any other public comment on items that are on the agenda to be voted on at tonight's meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, reports and presentations. Superintendent of Schools report to Dr. Leidy.
Good evening. Thank you. I have 2 items for the board this evening. The first one is an award that was given to a department within the school district, and I see Mrs. Brown sitting back there, members of the rec department, so we're going to sufficiently embarrass you and bring you up to stand beside the award there, if you would, please, and I will share with the board what this is all about. Sure, you all can come up. That's good. That's good. You deserve it. Thank you for being here tonight. So just some quick backgrounds. The board may remember that we've been having conversations about a new rec agreement that was put in place several years ago, and that rec agreement is actually built off of about a 50-year history of a relationship between our 3 municipalities and our school district. And that 50-year relationship is something that has proven to provide to our community and our citizens recreation activities, and that's inclusive, obviously, of our students, too. I remember when I started in the school district, Alan Van Drew used to say to me that the rec program is like our elementary extracurricular program plus. And I think that was a good description, and plus is also a good part because it's so much more than that. And these individuals that do this for us on a daily basis receive some recognition. Let me, if you would please, just let me read to you the award criteria for what they were given. The Agency of the Year Award inspires and recognizes exemplary accomplishments in positioning parks and recreation as an essential public service with meaningful community impact. The winning agency, which by the way, they're the winning agency. The winning agency provides a fresh perspective on significant parks and recreation issues, shows innovation and collaboration, and has demonstrated a high level of resourcefulness, especially in the recent years. And I think that it's pretty clear what our rec department has done for our students and for our citizens consistently is at a high level. And I would also remind us the work they did during the pandemic was, I would say, extraordinary. And that's not why they got this award exclusively, but it was part of why they got this award was the efforts that were from this group during the pandemic. But they also were recognized because of the cooperative partnership that we've already mentioned. It's not easy to navigate one government agency, let alone 4 simultaneously, and the fact that you do that and do it to the level that you do is worthy of recognition. And then also the idea of the comprehensive nature of the rec program. I started by saying that it's kind of like our elementary extracurriculars, but it's so much more than that. We have seasonal programs, there's bus trips, there is the Wildcat Care program, summer adventure camp, the playground program, the management of the borough pool, and scholarships for students and individuals in need who can't pay the fees associated with it, and the management of all of those scholarships is something that's done by the department too. So there's just so much to this. And then a few years ago, they decided, why not, we'll take on a pre-K program too, in addition to everything else that they're doing. And so a very, very much deserved recognition from the Pennsylvania Recreation and Parks Society as the agency of the year for the entire state of Pennsylvania. So congratulations.
You ready for me to say something?
Let's hear it.
So I was going to pull out the 30-page document that's behind the award, and I thought you're already too busy to hear anything on there. So quickly, I just would like to say thank you to the administration and the school board members. Not only you that sit here, but as Dr. Lady mentioned, it's over a 60-year agreement, and it goes back to our phys ed teachers starting a playground program. So we have had 3 directors in that amount of time, soon to be 4. That just goes to show you what a great place it is to work and to develop these programs because of what you just mentioned about working with the 4 communities. It is essential, and we are a model in the state. And I'm fortunate to have been shipped out to other communities to work with them to build this type of cooperation because of the resources that are there that can offer these programs, and there's so many of them to offer. So with that being said, I can't go on without recognizing the 4 ladies behind me that work very, very diligently as a team. We laugh about it a lot and talk about it a lot, how we cover for each other all the time in the staff shortages since 2020. So without that type of camaraderie and teamwork, would we ever have even written the paperwork to be awarded, but then to receive the award really goes to the credit of them behind me. So I really appreciate all their work and effort for all the years, not just since 2020, but like you had mentioned, everything that's really in that paper starts with 2020 and beyond. So thank you so much for all your hard work to keep us together with that agreement. I know Greg worked on it for a long time to get it in perpetuity so that it doesn't have an end date. And I think that will be very beneficial for all in the long run. So thank you.
Thank you, Tug.
And Tug, before you step away, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for all the years of service that you put into that position. Big shoes for somebody to be following here.
They'll be fine.
But we all wish you the best on your retirement.
Yes, yes, I can. So behind us, we have Nikki Singheiser. You just want to step out. She takes care of all the elementary basketball and summer adventure camp. Jenna Swerling, pre-K counts, after-school care, really the childhood education piece of it. Sue Caniff, the 80 plus to 100 programs that follow seasonally. Been with me since, I don't know, over 25 years close to.
And that's not 80 years old to 100. You're meaning the 80 plus.
Yeah. And Amy Thompson, who takes care of, we were talking about that today, the glue that holds us all together, that knows where everybody's at and what they're doing, and is really, really good with the customers that we serve.
The other item I wanted to share with the board, on Sunday, we hosted our elementary open houses, and that's plural. There were 6 open houses on Sunday. Anybody in the community, even outside of the community, had an opportunity to come in and tour our elementary schools. I think that even though we don't have a specific count of the numbers, we think we had between 1,000 and 1,500 visitors to our building on Sunday afternoon between 1 and 4. Nearly everybody that I had the opportunity to speak with visited at least 2 buildings, if not more, which I think was a nice element to this. There was no formal program, no dedication ceremonies. It really was just to allow people to come in and see how their taxpayer dollars were being put to use. Received a lot of compliments from the community. It was a neat group of individuals. We had community members who really had no other connection to the school. They didn't have a relative that worked here or a child that came to the school. They just wanted to check out the place. We had a significant number of retired administrators and teachers and support staff who came back and wanted to see it. We had former students, and when I say former students who have graduated, gone on and started families of their own, and former students who are still in our system but can't believe that the kindergarten looks like this a few years later, right? And then we also had prospective residents coming to check it out and took the opportunity to say, well, we've been thinking about coming to Mechanicsburg and we thought this was a great opportunity to come in and look at the schools. And we don't ever want to put a sign out, no more room in the inn, but I don't know that we want to be advertising that way either. So no, it really was. It was a great day. It was fulfilling. And I ran into Brian Haynes at Elmwood and I asked him,
We like it.
There you go.
It's a big place.
and Brian said, I feel like this has been the last 7 years of my life. And I said, a lot of people feel like this has been the last 7 years of their life. And so kudos to this board for taking on the challenges associated with a growing enrollment and maintaining a standard that this parents and the community expects for this district. And I think as a result, anybody who has looked at their home values in Mechanicsburg in the last 5 years will attest to the fact that quality schools attract and help a community continue to stay vibrant. And we are definitely a vibrant community right now. So thank you to the board and for those of you that were able to be here on Sunday, but to all of you for the support that you've shown to make our elementary program what it is. And we're not done, right? We're still doing work at our high school too. So that's my report.
Any questions on Dr. Leidy on the event on Sunday? I thought everything turned out well, and I think the numbers stood for themselves, what we've done. We'll move on to item 3.02, Capital Area Intermediate Unit, Mr. Bradley.
The intermediate unit we had our board meeting on April 27th. A couple of the things that we talked about. They have a program called Champions for Children, which I look at as very similar to what Operation Wildcat does, providing, looking for grants, doing things to get some money to help the classrooms, help the kids in need, help the things that are out there. So they have a lot of programs, and they've taken a little bit of a different approach and have been very successful in building up, for lack of a better, building up the coffers to get a little additional money to help build out things that are going on. Talked about at each of the board meetings, the different organizations within the school district or within the intermediate unit, within the intermediate unit give their reports, and they talk about different things that are going on. They're going through their version of the PSSAs as well. They were dealing with the PSSA situations. Talked about graduations coming up, Hilltop graduating, and that there's the something called Project Search, which is another opportunity for the students to work with community, to work in the business area to try and build those extra skills. And so that's in conjunction with Hershey Med. And so they said that, you can go to Hershey Med, and if you're needing to go from one part of the building to another part of the building, if there's a young gentleman or young woman that is taking you from that place to another, they might actually be IU students who have been trained as these guides or as being assistants and taking you around. So it helps them to build their skills. It gives them gainful employment. There's an article in their newsletter about someone who's a graduate of a program like this and who is actually employed at the pretzel, next to the cheesesteak. I'm trying to remember the Philadelphia, the pretzel company. And she was a member of this, participant in this program, and over a period of time built the skills and built that relationship. And it's just a way of giving them that opportunity to do something besides just going to class and going to the schools and getting the education that they're getting there, gives them those life skills that they can take and they can bring out. So it was really interesting to learn a little bit more about that program and how it continues to build out. Talked about a lot of different things about electronics, about how they're continuing to upgrade the payroll system and the other key HR systems that they had. They talked about they took on quite a lot, and they're learning that it's quite a lot to do all of this at one time. From a security standpoint, which was kind of interesting, they talked about breach notification policy and how there's been changes to the breach notification policy. And then also lessons learned. There was a particular school that got hit with the ransomware, and it cost quite a bit of work to get out of that situation. But they said what really did was they, like everything you hope, they learned a lot from it. And they've been able to work with other IUs and other districts to kind of talk about the lessons that they've learned from that and how to continue to push forward with ransomware and do those things that IUs and school districts and everybody have to continue to do to tighten up and work their way through those types of things. So lots of information coming out, and the next board meeting will actually be in a couple of weeks on May 25th.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Bradley?
I have a comment. I think you bring up a great point, and it's more of a global point that I've been thinking about, and it's the ability for, after the post-pandemic, it's the ability for high school students who are interested in careers or interested in gaining experience in different industries. Mine is obviously the medical industry and being at the hospitals, and previous to the pandemic, high school students had access to volunteer and had opportunities in hospitals and other industries. But after the pandemic, those opportunities have really dried up. And the point that the intermediate unit is reaching out to industry and trying to get avenues for their students to get their foot in the door to be close to patient care or close to different industries is impressive. I think that we do that in the high school by asking our seniors to do senior projects, and I would love to see us model something like that, or as a school district to try to get partnerships with different industries and centers to help our students get in. I mean, I get probably 20 requests a year, maybe even more, to go into the operating room with students, and it's virtually impossible for me to grant that. But I would love to have the ability to have students who are high-performing students or very interested students. You have to have some sort of a weed-out process, and I hate to say that, but to have the ability to work with the school district to say, okay, these students have been vetted, and to give them opportunities to do things like this, because it's really gone by the wayside after the pandemic. So I'm just saying, it just got me thinking about this, and I think that's amazing that the intermediate unit's doing that.
One of the other nice things that I forgot to mention was one of the they do graduation ceremonies. And really, when they say you really look at it, it's a little bit different from high school graduations where you have hundreds of kids and the whole thing. And they said a lot of cases, the ceremonies that they put on are very small group settings. And it's exactly what works right for the students, for the kids, because they would never be able to handle, in some cases, they would never be able to handle a big, large 200 kids and all the parents and all the pomp and circumstance that goes on with graduation. They have these small ceremonies, but it gives the parents that opportunity to see their kids get that graduation type recognition that they probably would never have an opportunity to get to if not for what the intermediate unit was putting together. So. But your point is great, and I think of it as well as, it gives opportunity for these individuals to be able to be contributing and be able to participate and to be able to feel that sense of accomplishment with everything that they're doing.
I mean, in a generation that's hidden behind screens and computers, if we're allowed to give these students opportunities to interact, it's always a positive thing. So that's always just been in the back of my head, and you brought it.
Anything else for Mr. Bradley?
Mr. Bradley, thank you for the report. Item 3.03, Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center Report, Mr. Sanger.
Thank you. The JSC met on April 24th for our regular business meeting. And in addition to the regular business items, I wanted to give a shout out to a carpentry student from Mechanicsburg, Maria Clark, who was our student presenter at the meeting. We learned more about Skills USA, a technology education student organization that holds competitions and events throughout the year. And this year, Cumberland Perry hosted the event, which had 400 students from the region representing different things and being different events. Maria ran for and was elected as a state officer for Skills USA, something that the Votech had not had for about 20 years. So she'll get to represent us at the state level and actually at the national level, which is pretty cool. And in addition to, at least for me, file it under one of the things you didn't even know, an additional, part of what they do at CTC. So great for her, great for Mechanicsburg to represent the CTC at that level. So I thought I'd bring that to you. I also wanted to, I was thinking about both what your comments were. We have an awards night ceremony for the CTC that's on the 23rd, which is also just a really cool event. Again, file under like things you never knew were there and available to all of the different programs as the students receive so many different awards and essentially graduate from the CTC, though they also then come to their home district for commencement. And the Dr. Rhodes, you were talking about getting kids into hospitals. I mean, the emerging health professional program that is has grown, doubled in size, and continues to feed into that is one layer of that, and it's certainly not the only thing you were talking about, but a number of different avenues beyond just the old version of nursing as a program now is a whole different set of careers that kind of can be audited and looked at as as they go through their career path. So within the CTC, so I thought that was really cool kind of linkage. And with that, one other note that Votech received a $75,000 dual credit grant from the state, and that provided for full funding of tuition for nearly all CTC students for college and high school or dual enrollment. And they're working on some other programs. The only one that was kind of left out of that was the health program, but they're working on some funding for that part of it too. So really cool, 75 grand to Votech is a big deal. I keep saying it. CTC is a big deal on a $10 million budget, and certainly something that will help offset costs and help, kind of allow those students to have a leg up when they get to college. So really cool thing to see. I saw the announcement last week and scrolled through there, and good to see the Votech as part of that. So that concludes my report.
Right. Any questions for Mr. Sanker on the Career and Technical Center report? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Move on to 3.04 PSBA legislative report. I'd just like to report, number one is I had reported out before that Dr. Leidy and I had visited the School Safety Institute, and that's now open. So I had said I'll talk to the PSBA if any of the other members of the board would like to go out and see it. I mean, I found it to be extremely beneficial. Just seeing that oversight, in making future policy, both board policy and administrative regulation on school safety issues. So now that it's totally up and running, we'll see how they're going to schedule people in and maybe take a couple groups out a couple times to it. Very worthwhile of your time, I feel. The other thing I did see that the PSBA had just put out, I saw it somewhere where we're a little ahead of the 8 ball here. Our governor has proposed to change the property tax rebate to kind of raise the threshold a little bit to get it more in line with the current poverty level. That, I mean, we address so many different groups in poverty in so many different ways, but some of our seniors kind of tend to get overlooked. So he is proposing to the legislators that they raise the threshold for that on both the property owner and the renters, more to like the income levels that we're already voting on tonight. So I thought that was good to see that other people were also looking out for an often overlooked group. And lastly, it's not directly PSBA, but a bunch of us had attended the law update on April 19th. And that's always good if you can get to that. You know, our law firm goes over some of the more important issues that's going on. And the two I thought that were important and PSBA related, one was the school funding decision. And, you know, after having them simplify it and really put it down on, you know, common person's terms, it's going to be a mess for many years, is how I see it. And that's more or less how they said it. I mean, the court did rule that there was inequity. The court also ruled, which I thought was very good. First, they had to find was, is education actually a fundamental right of the person in Pennsylvania? And they said, yes, it was. And therefore, that goes under strict scrutiny, the actual Constitution. And they did feel that it was totally inadequate and not fair. But like nobody here absolutely has any kind of an answer on how to fairly do it. That students in low wealth districts with low taxing ability, those students are not getting the same education as those in the higher areas. And I mean, it's like, it's out there. Something has to be done, but it's, as they say, it could be decades until this really works its way through and you see any real progress one way or the other. So the other thing was just absolutely.
One of the things that I think we all have to keep our eye on with this is that if additional funding is met with additional responsibility, it's not really additional funding. Right? And one of the things that we're watching right now in our own county is that the responsibility of mental health services has primarily been a county service. We're getting a sense that there's an attitude out there that if districts are going to get more money, then districts can take on more responsibilities. And that's not what the court said. The court said that based on the existing responsibilities of school districts, there's inadequate funding. And so when this begins to play out in the media and in Harrisburg, we just have to remain cognizant of not taking on more than what K-12 is really given the mission to take on.
No, I'm glad you added that. I mean, I could talk about this all night because I mean, it's a subject that I think is dear to all of us because I mean, and where we've fallen, I really don't know. I mean, whether we would be hurt or benefit, you know, it's our residents, the citizens here and things like that. But it is something that has to be addressed. I mean, when you go into these very rural and very urban schools, they just don't have the income. And if you look at their facilities and what they have to work with, this is not the same as what so many other areas of the state have. So, and hopefully more of it will go in under the new funding formula that is addressing the growth and the negative growth in other areas in a much more fair way. And maybe even something will come out of hold harmless. You know, maybe someday the courts will knock that down. You know,
20-some years of hold harmless, you think finally, maybe, somebody will.
I know those of us has been involved in this, it's a dear issue to us that it's.
And I think that really underscores some of the challenges that at a state level they're going to have to work through is the disparity of wealth among districts, but then also how do they account for rapidly growing school districts, say Mechanicsburg, where we've grown almost 20% in 7 years, or rapidly decreasing school districts where hold harmless, to Mrs. Maris's point, they maybe haven't seen a corresponding decrease in their funding. And so the state's got a big issue there to unpack with 500 school districts. So.
And what's kind of makes it very unique is it's really not something that can be fought along like political lines, because oftentimes in the very rural areas, they're very conservative Republican areas, and the urban areas are the opposite way, and they're very Democratic. They share the same common problem, and how they're going to work together to come up with a solution to this is going to be interesting, especially under a court order that really just kind of said people have to do something here. Like the judges themselves didn't really offer any viable solution to.
You talk about it like at the state level, but even within our county, it would be hard for our own legislators to find a coalition of their friends when where the growth is only CV and Mechanicsburg, and the other districts are, kind of steady state or losing students. It's a different. It's different math for different districts.
Absolutely. And it goes back to something I know Mrs. Maris always preached about, getting more and more under the new funding formula
Yes, very much.
that addresses these issues sadly, Hold Harmless is there.
I mean, they spent years studying it, coming up with the formula, starting to put the funds through it, but yet so little of our funding goes through that formula. that-
It'll take 50 years till, the additional funding catches up and actually supersedes what was then existing funding. So just something that keeps us all busy. And the other issue I thought was interesting is they did update us somewhat on the Title IX, particularly like with transgender students. And just very briefly, because these are things, especially those up for reelection, might be hearing, when they're out knocking on doors and listening to constituents, and that is, there's 94 district courts in the United States and their territories. There's 11 Circuit Court of Appeals that actually hear those kind of cases, and each area is under a jurisdiction. And we're under the third Circuit Court of Appeals, and they actually made the strongest ruling of all of them. And I don't see it here, that it's essentially, originally 6 Circuit Courts of Appeals heard these cases, and they all ruled that students can use restroom facilities of the gender that they identify with. The 6th Circuit Court of Appeals held it then in blanc amongst all the justices there, and they actually overturned that decision. So out of 11 Circuit Court of Appeals, you have 5 have ruled they can, 1 has now said they can't. So it's very likely it'll eventually go to the Supreme Court as you start to get splits in decisions. But it is something, we in the Third Circuit have to follow the Third Circuit Court decision. And that says that they have access to facilities as they identify at that time. So, if people say you should change this, you can't do this or whatever, we are kind of bound on the court, and you might want to expound on it too, Dr. Light.
I think you said it.
Right. So it's really not something we can control one way or the other. It's not an issue. It's not something we decide. It's already been done for us. So. And any questions on the report?
Mr. Rupp, I wanted to say on number 1 with the School Safety Institute, I wanted to thank Dr. Leidy for being a board member. I'm not sure if I have the right term for being part of the leadership of this new institute. I think it's to our benefit as a district to have you be a part of the discussions of how school safety is impacting students and schools and facilities across the state. So I'm really happy that you are there and being able to bring that back to us, even though and then in turn bringing it out to the other 500 districts there, but specifically for us, I think that's really great for us.
But also the ribbon cutting and the speech, so appreciate putting the time into that too.
Yeah, I was honored to be asked and humbled, to be honest with you, but it truly is a unique experience and something that I said it publicly and I'll say it again. I think every administrator should have an opportunity to do something like this. And as difficult as it is, it's a reality. So, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Right. Any further questions on the PSBA report? On to item 3.05, Finance Facilities Committee report, Mr. Sanker.
The committee didn't meet, but I wanted to note that there are 2 items on the agenda that we reviewed at board workshop that are finance and facility related. So in essence, we've done the work to review them before we brought them up for a vote tonight.
Very good. Item 3.06, Board President report. Announcement of an executive session held on May 9th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. to discuss safety, personnel, and student matters. And also not on it, but I'd just like to thank River Rock, those that could make it to the tour. I know Mr. Sanker was there, I was there, Dr. Leidy was there. I try to thank the administrators of all the buildings when they offered these tours. And I thought it was very fulfilling, and I was very impressed with what I saw at River Rock when we toured it. It is a building we own and we lease to them. And I mean, just seeing how they handle those that needs kids from basically kindergarten through 12th grade, I was just absolutely impressed. Mr. Sanker, you might want to add.
I agree. It was really interesting. It was like putting a piece of the puzzle together every time we talk about it, but we've never, I hadn't seen it. So it was really great to be able to kind of put that piece of the puzzle together and really understand better what goes on there. And seeing it through board member lens, through a landlord lens, through many different lenses, it was great. Wonderful facility. I was very happy to have gone through that. So thanks, Mr. Bigham, for setting it up as well and for all you did with that facility.
And what I've come to appreciate is they're very good neighbors in that community. And I know at the time when we voted to have them lease that building, there was concern that maybe we were bringing a bad element to Sharmanstown and we were gonna cause harm to Sharmanstown. And I've been really happy to see the partnership and how I feel like it's actually made that community better to have those students helping and just being into the community. It's been a wonderful partnership.
It has. And if you remember, Mrs. Maris, the gentleman that ran that initiative, like that was against it originally, is he did come back a year later and basically said I was wrong. You know, I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
That he was very impressed. All the things he thought was going to happen didn't happen.
Completely the opposite.
Right. He just said they're great neighbors. I mean, it was better than a vacant building. And, you know, what they're doing for those at-risk kids, and it's really nice. And the administrator did say is, if any of the other board members would be able to go down, she would love to do another tour, you know, maybe next fall or whatever.
Well, I was gonna say that too, that I had another event
Well,
that
there's
day.
a few
but I
people had
was-
obligations that normally don't, that would have attended. And it is good to see, you know, when we're sending our at-risk kids to these different facilities, you know, whether it's through the IU or through River Rock, it's just nice to occasionally go in and see what they're really doing. And the openness of the kids and talking to us it was just
Great
amazing.
kids,
Like,
yeah.
It really was. It was.
I spent 7 years at that school, so I really wanted to see it, how
At
it's
River Rock.
transformed.
Prior to it being Rivers.
Prior. But
That's part of having it in the community, again, selfishly, just like having PSBA next door and being able to access great, great facilities. The idea that, you know, we're talking about, oh, this student has to come from over the mountain, from some other, you know, farther away district, just the idea of having it there. We do have students who need to go there, and so having that as a placement was just, it's great for those families, I'm sure, who much better to have it there than have it 45 minutes away.
And looking at it more globally, though, is these smaller rural districts that use it also. Sometimes they use it on a more long-term basis than we do because they don't have the student body and the capabilities of doing more in-house. I mean, just having that opportunity there for them to send those at-risk kids there for even multiple years, I thought it was great. So. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, new business, athletics, recreation, item 4.01. Dr. Lebo.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the team physician contract with Penn State Health for a 3-year term, beginning with the 23-24 school year.
We have a second. Second. Any discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
4.02, Dr. Lebo.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the fall athletic coaches for the 2023-2024 school year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? I'd just like to thank Dr. Rhodes and Mr. Hartman for these suggestions when we changed this to where, rather than how we changed hiring them ahead of time and voting on it, I think it really works out much better. It gets everybody in there long before the season starts. That's why there's 9 people on a board and not 1. Different insight, how to do things maybe different than had been done. So I think it's worked very well. So I want to thank you too for bringing that up. Right, any further comments? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Okay, item 6, new business, budget and finance. Item 6.01, Ms. Morgan.
Yes, I'd like to ask the board to approve the treasurer's report as per the attachments, which include the following. Number 1 is the treasurer's report for April 2023. Number 2 is the board budget report, April 2023. Number 3 is the general fund invoices, paycheck number 65806 through 65964 in the amount of $522,572.99. Number 4 is the electronic payments in the amount of $3,300,780.16. And number 5 is the general fund invoices payable check number 65965 through 65983 in the amount of $673,755.87. 6 is the Capital Reserve Fund invoices paid, check number 1853 through 1856 in the amount of $68,286.50. Number 7 is the Series AA of 2020 Construction Fund invoices paid, check number 264 through 282 in the amount of $2,339,713.57. Number 8 is the Series of 2020 Construction Fund invoices paid, check number 257 through 260 in the amount of $7,543.88. And lastly, number 9 is the investment portfolio.
Can you read 8 again? I think you flipped the numbers at the end on 8.
Series of 2020 Construction Fund invoices paid, check number 257 through 260 in the amount of $7,453.88.
We should have just said $543 just to mess with them again.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Now that we have any comment on
apologize.
it? Seeing none, Mr. Lonwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.02, Mr. Burkhardt.
I ask the board to approve the food service budget for the 2023-2024 school year as per the attachments.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I just wanted to say that I appreciate, like a lot of the things that we discuss are like sexy in terms of athletics and this and that, but food services is an incredibly important part of what we do here at the board. It's vitally important that students don't go to our school hungry. And I think that we, as a school district, make an effort to not food shame kids. And I think this is a incredibly important topic, and we always have to keep looking at, how much we're charging and what we're offering and what things that we're offering the students. So I know that this might not be one of the sexiest things that we talk about, but it is one of the most important, and it is vitally important as a school district that we make sure that students aren't we do our best to make sure that students aren't hungry in our buildings. I just think that's hugely important, and I just want to mention that.
Well, and to piggyback on that point, when I was going to the open houses on Sunday, a set of kids, a classroom had written, "If I was president," and I would say 90% of the ones that wrote in there said they wanted to make lunch free for kids. So
Right.
it is very important and very important to the kids who are thinking, if I could be president, what would I change? They put 10 things, but one of those common things was that they wanted to see lunch free.
I mean, if I had one wish, if I could do one thing on this board and just pass it, I would love to do that too. And breakfast as well. Because I just think it's hugely important that we make sure that we're always addressing these issues.
Because without food, you can't focus on learning.
I know.
I appreciate the comments, and I think Ms. Marlin, our food service director, deserves so much credit for the work she does. We run an in-house program, which is kind of unique among school districts versus contracting, and does a tremendous job with it. So that ownership thing, that piece of it, I think is there with the in-house program. Then also, I think kudos to our buildings, even examples of like breakfast. I know Mr. Harris, Mr. Yon at the middle school. So high school, middle school have been thought different about delivery of breakfast and how do we increase participation. And so I think it's been a great team effort, and we really do have, I think, a special program. So great.
Additional comments? Mr. Lonwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.03, Mr. Burkhardt.
I ask the board to appoint Greg Longwell, Director of Business Operations, CFO, and Bobby Healy, Assistant Business Manager Controller, as representatives to South Central Trust for 2023-2024.
Second.
Second.
Further comments? Mr. Lonwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.04, Mr. Burkhardt.
I ask the board to approve the appointment of Tracy Morgan as Board Treasurer for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
6.05, Mr. Burkhardt.
I ask the board to approve the district depositories for 2023-2024 as presented in the attached.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
6.06, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to approve the property tax rebate guidelines, where the minimum age for participation in the program will be lowered to 70.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
No.
Item 7, new business curriculum. Item 7.01, Mrs. Maris.
I make a motion for the board to approve the student services contracts as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 7.02, Mrs. Maris.
Make a motion for the board to approve the textbook adoption, AP language and composition as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say one thing. I'm sorry, I got a
Oh,
lot
that's
of
all right.
comments, and there this came up, and I was reviewing this. I actually think it's vitally important that that we're always looking at our AP services that we provide students, and always looking, and I know that you do an amazing job, so this is kind of a shout out to our high school. It's super important that we always look at this, even try to expand it, because I think challenging our students who want to challenge themselves is always one of our most important roles here. And I think the AP, as well as possibly expanding our ability to have students attend college courses as well is vitally important. I think you're doing an amazing job, and I think you're going to do an even better job in the future on that too, the expanded role. But
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 8, new business facilities. Item 8.01, Mr. Sacker.
I make a motion to approve the replacement fence for Shepherdstown Elementary as submitted by R&S Fence for $14,344 as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9, new business personnel. Item 9.01, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the personnel report as per the attachments.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.02, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the job description for the Director of Academic Program as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I would just like to say this is the position that is replacing Mr. Jason Baker.
Yeah, this is not a new position. This is, as we do with all administrative positions, and the board knows when they come open, we look at the purpose of the position and evaluate current needs in the district. In this case, we felt that the needs of the district required that we look at the job description and make some adjustments to the job description. But as far as the overall administrative team, this is not a new position.
All right, good. Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.03, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the job description for the Supervisor of High School Programs and Services as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'm just glad that we can keep Mr. Harris around for a couple more years maybe.
And if I may, I'll jump in on this one too, to Mr. Bradley and Dr. Rhodes's point about partnerships and providing opportunities. If you look at the program partnership element within the job description, that is an area that both Mr. Harris and myself for better part of 2 decades have really wanted to see expand. And I think with the capacity that we'll be able to bring with this position, we're going to see some things happen there that truly have been dreams previously, and now we'll hopefully see some more reality to it.
Maybe we'll have the time to do this later, but I too want to thank Mr. Harris for his service as our high school principal, and I'm glad that he's staying in this role and look forward to us being able to expand what we're able to do through the high school principal positions.
Absolutely. No, I think it is the appropriate time to do that, Lee. Any comment or?
Well, I can tell you, I was a staff member when Mr. Harris was green a little bit as principal, but the strides that he's made from, is it 17 years? Somewhere around there? 18 from then until now was absolutely outstanding. I hate to lose him in the position he's in, but this he's going into is truly vital to our district, and again, I'm glad he's staying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I hired a great high school principal 18 years ago, so.
You did, huh?
I did.
Huh.
She was the only one to a board of 9.
I always like to say that with both my sons going through the high school, I would go to Mr. Harris on several occasions, and as many parents do, and ask him for things that I thought that my students needed and what things that I thought he needed to do. And I think 99% of the time the answer was always no, and he would always say, "Trust me." And I think I told you this at the previous board meeting that literally every single time he was right, and it just shows you that his experience as a principal and his knowledge was always right. So I appreciate that, and I'm definitely going to miss you as principal.
Now he can only tell us candidly how many of those gray hairs are because of you bugging him.
There's probably a few on there, right? I mean, you got a minute.
I didn't realize this was going to turn into a Mr. Harris
Yeah.
roast. So perhaps we should turn it over to Mr. Longwell.
We may need to organize that at some point. More to come.
A good idea was thought.
Oh, I'm just saying that I was probably the only one on the board that interviewed him.
Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Moving on to item 9.04, Ms. Morgan.
I was busy correcting the record that I was part of the interview with her, so.
Just don't have the memory.
She's distracted.
I would like to ask the board to approve the job description for the Data and System Analysis Director as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10, new business policy. Mr. Hartman.
I move to adopt the agreement and waiver of hearing before the Board of Directors between parent, student, and the board, and the terms and conditions set forth therein. Direct the superintendent to place said agreement in students' education records, and authorize the superintendent to act on behalf of the board in implementing the agreement, and order the expulsion of the following student. Student F of 22-23, beginning April 20th, 2023, for 1 calendar year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10.02, Mr. Hartman.
I move to approve the second and final reading of revised board policy 101, mission statements, beliefs, as per the attachments.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'm just
going to say very quickly, is ever since I've been on the board, the district has put together a committee who actually, through process of elimination, comes up with a mission statement. The board itself, we don't actually do it like some districts do. I was on 2 of them. I was not on this last one. I believe Mr. Sanger was. Mr. Hartman. And it was a question from the audience I thought you might want to address if you feel comfortable to, or if
I'd be happy to start, just to say that
Both of you.
I think that this was all part of the comprehensive plan and a bigger community effort to align our goals with our, current population. And I think that the questions that were asked earlier, I think we're kind of semantic in a sense that I think they're still captured in there in perhaps a different way, but kind of better reflected I don't know, the spirit of another sentence. It was like, oh, let's grab this word, and that makes sense here. And I think instead of it saying social emotional, it said like healthy, joyous, environment. I didn't have it up, but I did earlier. So I thought that was really interesting. A good question, and I think there were a lot of stuff that we really considered that still gets to the same framework. But I thought all of the language needed to be everything was good that was tweaked, and I think you had talked about the old language saying preparing for college, and that we definitely know that there are many avenues for students beyond high school, and so that was sort of like take that sentence out and like what do we want the new sentence to be. So I think they were there's a lot of deliberation and a lot of work in all the sentences that we ended up with, and so that was really I think a really thoughtful and deliberative way that we got to where we are, and I'm happy with the solution we have right now.
And they typically have upwards of 80 people on them, the ones I've known.
We had 80 people who were comprised of community members, staff, parents, school board members. People definitely are multiple hats within there. Facilitated by Mr. Bitts very ably, starting during the pandemic, I think, so it was all over Zoom. It was really interesting just as a process to go through, and then we solicited, we had homework to go out and further reach out to the community, and so I think that outreach ended up being about 400 because we were all supposed to talk to 5 people.
Yeah, that's typically,
so it was
usually 5 people per, right.
Yeah.
So
it was a nice cross-section of things.
Mr. Hartman, do you have anything you'd like to add on the?
No, Mr. Sanker brought it up. Great. I was going to bring up about the community members that were part of it, teachers, the staff, all that. And just reiterate as well, it was out there for everybody to see for a period of time before we voted on it. So, it's not like this is anything new that we're coming up with. It was out there for people to comment on. But it was a great process. I think we had 1 meeting in person, and then was it all online? I forget now. It's been so long, but it was challenging, and I mean I think we came up with as a collective team came up with a great product.
I know the 2 times I did it, I thought it was very rewarding. I mean, just seeing how the process works, you're having that many people, and then each responsible to reach out to 5. It does get a good cross section of the community.
And I think it gets so many different points of views too.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, as many times as we've changed this or altered it somewhat over the years, it's
Right, absolutely.
It's spoken from the community at that point in time.
If I may, I can't help myself, right? I'm sitting here, I'm bouncing.
Yes,
like
you were
I'm ready
part
to
of the
go.
process too, sorry. We didn't mention
But I
that.
just to remind everybody that the mission statement is our output, right? The mission statement is what we want our kids to know, understand, do, and be like. That didn't change in this process. We've had that in place now for 2 of our comprehensive plans. The belief statements, so the mission statement's the output. The belief statements are the inputs. The belief statements are what are we as the adults providing for our students, and that is a really important distinction as we have this conversation, and the comprehensive plan committee looked at that and worked through that process. I don't think we should ever forget the distinction between the mission statement and the belief statements is the way we look at it in this district.
Absolutely. Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10.03, Mr. Hartman.
I move to approve the second and final reading of revised board policy 202, eligibility of non-resident students as per the attachments.
Second. Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 12, hearing of visitors. We have reached the second opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents of the school district. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please come up to the podium and share your district name and address. For items that were not on the agenda. Seeing no one. I'd like to also thank our scout for being here tonight. I'm sure you're working on what, your civic merit badge or one of the merit badges? Citizenship? Very good. Good luck. Item 13, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to adjourn.
We have a second.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.